All right, folks, as I've been saying, I've been broadcasting live from the campus of Clark Atlanta University. Now we're joined by the university's president, Dr. Ronald Johnson. Doc, how you doing?
Doing great, doing great.
All right, glad to be here. So let me tell you, first of all, so Doc and his wife were members of my church in Houston, Brook Hollow Baptist Church, a church without walls. So when I spoke here, it was in February, I guess, when I was here. So he said, look, he said, I would love for you to bring your show back to our campus, and so some of our students can help. So do this here, although you're on us here. So pan that way, pan right. So you see some of the students out here. So these are some of your broadcast students who are helping us, of course, work on the show. And so we got some other students over here as well. And so, Doc, first and foremost, how are things going? First of all, how long you been in Clark Atlanta?
A little over 2 years. This is the start of the third.
And you came from where?
Came from Houston, Texas Southern University, dean of the business school there, Jesse H. Jones School.
What is the most important thing you are trying to instill here at Clark Atlanta?
Really, what we want to do is we want to transform students into independent learners, because that's what they have to be, especially in the 21st century. If you're not an independent learner, you're going to be replaced by a robot.
And so, first of all, how many students here at Clark Atlanta, and what are your top majors?
This year we have 4,004 students, and our top major is mass communication. And then, of course, followed by business.
And when we talk about obviously where HBCUs are, you have a number of them out there are dealing with struggling, also trying to get alumni giving. I've been focusing on that issue with our hashtag HBCU Giving Day initiative. What is your alumni giving here in terms of the percentage of your graduates who are giving back to the university? It's
around 5%. It's not that great, but that's traditional for HBCUs. And this weekend is we're having homecoming, and so we're going to be walking around with a plate and make sure we
and that's critically important, because look, I always make the point to folks to say, look, don't come back wearing your letters and say, oh, I love my university, and you don't leave a check when you leave here after being here for homecoming.
Well, you haven't seen our homecoming. I mean, the homecoming is tremendous, and they have vehicles that open up into living rooms and all the rest of that. So we're going to walk around and say, okay, look, drop something in the hat.
And I know some people may say, okay, you're making light of it, but the reality is when you go out and you're trying to get research funding, you're trying to get grant funding, what people don't realize, one of the first questions you get asked by those institutions, what is the giving of your alumni? And then if that number is low, you then get asked, well, wait a minute, if your own folks won't support your efforts, then why should we?
Well, it's actually even more important for a private HBCU, because a private HBCU is owned by its alumni, and the alumni need to recognize that they own it. It's not like a state institution, and so it's really important that you invest in your stuff.
Well, one of the things that we've been emphasizing that, obviously, and trying to get people to push that. Florida A&M, same thing, 5%, with the president of Howard University said when he got there it was around 3.7%. Now it's around 10%. And so do you find yourself, when you travel around this country, really trying to get folks to believe in the concept of tithing back to Clark Atlanta?
I do, and one of the things I can say, though, about the alumni of Clark College, Atlanta University, and Clark Atlanta, they're really fabulous people. And the question is now we just got to make the connection between being fabulous and being focused on providing the support.
Now, you've been here, you said 2 years. Where do you want to see Clark Atlanta, let's say 5 years from now?
I want to see Clark Atlanta really at what I call the crossroads of ideas that matter. Ideas That Matter is an acronym for innovation and entrepreneurship, design thinking. This is a way of thinking about things focused on human-centered needs, and then environmental sustainability, arts and humanities, and then the sciences. I want to see us really collectively performing in all of those areas. Right now we do very, very well in many of them, and in some we really are outstanding, but we really want to be outstanding in all of those. Ideas That Matter is something that changes the world.
All right, then let me go to folks in our studio. George, what's your question? Make it tight, make it right, and don't try to bring up Chicago.
I am not going to bring up Chicago. We're going to talk about Atlanta, which is a great city, wonderful city. It looks like you got a shot at bringing Amazon down there. Are you participating in that, bringing Amazon and bringing other corporations to Atlanta so that we can keep those students in Atlanta and they can work at some great jobs?
Well, I'm on the board of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and the Metro Atlanta Chamber is really working very, very hard to bring Amazon in. We've been very, very successful as a city attracting major corporations down here, largely because of what Ambassador Young calls the Atlanta way.
Let's go to Avis. Avis, what's your question?
Yeah.
Dr. Johnson.
In recent years, hello, Dr. Johnson. In recent years, we've seen that HBCUs have actually seen an increase in enrollments, and it's really been wonderful to see that. As an HBCU grad, I'm super happy to see that. And I'm wondering if we're seeing the same thing at Clark Atlanta.
Yes, yes. We've had significant growth since I've been here, and it's largely because the students that are coming out today, especially out of California, out of Chicago, they're recognizing that it's very, very important that they connect to their roots, and also it is important for us to recognize that something that Du Bois talked about, which is double consciousness. All black folks have that split in us.
Yes.
And we need to be someplace where we feel comfortable being ourselves and not being the historical other, and that's one of the reasons why I think we have an increased interest in HBCUs.
Wendy, a question. I got about 45 seconds for question and answer.
Absolutely. So, quick question. You mentioned a little bit about inclusiveness, and I think that that's something that's really interesting as an administrator. When you look at your institution, how do you make sure that your institution is inclusive? As a HBCU, sometimes we default and say, oh, it's a HBCU, so it's inherently inclusive. But are there any strategies in which you use to make sure that your institution is inclusive?
Strategies for, I didn't catch that last part.
In terms of making sure you're inclusive beyond black students.
Oh, yes. You know, that's one of the things that is a corruption. In the 21st century, there's been a corruption in the way that the world looks at schools. HBCUs, defined in the 1965 Education Act, are institutions that served African Americans prior to 1964. We were always inclusive. Always inclusive. The reason why we were created is because the other institutions were exclusive.
That's right.
And so now they talk about HBCUs as being exclusive. It's not the case. I can tell you that there's not one black president that I know of that if someone is going to be financially enrolled and they bring a check that doesn't bounce, that they're not going to take them in. Okay.
Well, Dr. Johnson, we certainly appreciate it. Good luck with what you're doing here at Clark Atlanta. We're certainly glad to be on the campus broadcasting the show and, of course, shedding light for our viewers of what you're doing here.
All right.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Great. Okay.
All right.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh, my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no.
That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.